All right. Hopefully, you guys can hear me now. So, I just completed a live stream with no sound. And unfortunately, I got no notifications from anywhere that there was no sound coming through. So, bit of an embarrassment, but that's okay. Life happens. Life happens, and so we're gonna run it again. We're gonna run it again. I'm already sitting here, so we're gonna go back through the entire live stream, the entire conversation about hiring season. And if you cannot hear me, please let me know in the chat so that I can make sure that my sound is working. But thank you for those of you who are tuning back in. This is tonight's episode of The Career Climb with sound, with sound. And if this is your first time on The Career Climb, this is where we spark conversations with industry leaders, executives, and professionals. And we talk about the career landscape, workplace culture, and leadership. And if you've never seen me before, I am Julia Rock, your host and the founder and CEO at Rock Career Development. And I'm excited that you are here. And I'm excited that you can hear me. To catch the replay of this episode and all past episodes, you can follow me here on LinkedIn, or you can head to rockcareer.com/CC archive, and you can look at our YouTube playlist and catch all of the episodes. But if you are here tonight, that means you're interested in hearing tonight's topic about getting ready for hiring season. And so I would love for you to stay engaged with me in the chat. Please drop some questions. So if there's something that you've been thinking about as you're getting to hiring season, getting ready to put applications in, go ahead and drop those questions. Or if you have comments or feedback, I welcome that as well. So please, let's keep the conversation tonight engaging. And also just let me know where you're watching from. I'm sitting in Houston, Texas. Would love to hear where you're watching from. And so with that, we're going to do take two of the Career Climb tonight. And we're going to get into, are you ready for hiring season? Last night, I did a live stream where we talked a little bit about making sure that you're not stuck from a career perspective, and making sure that you are putting the same fire under your own tail as they would have it at work. Let's say if you're not performing well. And as part of that conversation, I mentioned that September and October are extremely busy hiring months. And so if that's the case, because we've passed the summertime, we've passed the summer vacations, we've passed all of that. So now in September, October, recruiters are coming back refreshed, they're ready to fill roles. And also there's a sense of urgency for them because you have the big holidays coming up in November and December. And that's pretty much where things come to a screeching halt until hiring picks up again in January and February. So this is the window. Let's say you've been applying over the summer and perhaps you weren't seeing much traction, you weren't getting that many responses. Or let's say that you were thinking and kind of hemming and hawing about whether or not you should apply. This is the time to get in there. And so given the fact that this is a good time to get back into the market, I wanted to share a few kind of insights or tips and tricks to kind of help you get ready for this season. And I haven't really read from a script in a while. Usually my live streams are pretty unscripted at this point, but there are a few things that I want to make sure that I cover so that you can be prepared. And again, if you cannot hear me, especially if you're watching on LinkedIn, please go ahead and drop it in the chat so I can make sure I get the sound going. And so with that, the first thing I want to talk about is making sure that you are clear on what you want. Are you clear on what you want? And what I mean by that is when you're applying for jobs in a competitive season, there are a lot of other applicants who probably have similar experience, and there's just a large volume of applications going into these job requisitions, and recruiters may get overwhelmed. And so it's really important for you to put your time where it makes the most sense for you, which is in roles that are most aligned with your career goals and your career aspirations. So taking a step back to say, what kind of career do I want? What kind of job do I want? What's important to me? Taking the time to do that will allow you to tailor and narrow your focus so that you can apply so it's quality over quantity. Let's say that. It's quality over quantity, because yes, you can put in 500 applications, but let's say you're not qualified, they're not what you want, and it's going to take a while for you to get a response anyway because the recruiter's overwhelmed. How much sense does that make for you? And part of getting clear also comes down to you doing a certain level of research, right? As people would say, Google is free. You don't just have to use the company website. So taking time to really do research on the types of jobs that you're interested in, on the companies that you may be looking at even the cities that you're thinking about moving to, whatever it is, getting as much clarity as possible and allowing the research to kind of help back that up is going to make the process a lot easier for you. So you're not just kind of spraying and praying and hoping that you're getting a job that you want. And if you're struggling with getting clarity, if you're like, Julia, I'm at the very beginning of my job search process, I don't even know how to get the clarity about what I want to do, I have a few questions that you can begin to ask yourself tonight. As soon as you're off this live stream, here are a few questions you can ask yourself. 1, what activities do I like doing at work? And again, we can all say no one loves doing work. We get that. But when you look at your time at work, what are the kinds of activities that you've been engaged in that you have felt like you were using your skills well, that you found them interesting, that you actually had a sense of accomplishment when you were finished, and it's something that you wouldn't mind doing again? Those are the kinds of things that you can put in the column of tasks that you like doing or activities that you like doing. The second thing is for you to ask yourself, what kind of problems do I like solving? So we talked about the activities, but then it's also, let's look at what are the kinds of problems that I like solving? Because when you start to look at job descriptions, they're going to talk about, hey, you're going to face these kinds of challenges, or we're dealing with this issue, or we're expecting this position to come in and do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And so when you're thinking about that and looking and reading the job description, you need to see, hey, are these the kinds of problems that I would want to spend my time working on? Are these the kinds of challenges that I would enjoy, helping with? And so that's the second question to ask yourself. The third question that you can ask yourself is, what kind of people do I want to work around? The reason why that's helpful is because even if you find the tasks that you like, if you're in an environment that sucks, or you're around people that don't seem like they're aligned for you, or you feel like it's going to be a tough environment, it still won't make you happy. You will still feel uncomfortable. And you may still start to look for a job, 3 to 6 months out. So asking yourself, what kind of people do I want to work around? What kind of boss do I want to have? Asking yourself those kinds of questions will allow you to start to take away some of that fog so that you can hone in on the applications. And then the last thing I'll talk about is, what size company or organization do you want to work in? And, there's a difference between working in a startup environment versus a kind of an enterprise, well-established organization. There are organizations that have a lot of structure and red tape and processes, and they're rigid. And there are other places that are just flying by the seat of their pants because they're building things as they go. So it's really important for you to get clarity on the kind of environment that you want to work in as well, in terms of the size of the company, so that you're applying to places that are going to fit what you want. Because if you thrive in a big environment, being in a startup culture is going to rattle you, because you're going to be wearing 12 different hats because they simply aren't staffed to have everybody for a dedicated position necessarily. You may have to do multiple things. Or on the other side, if you like the fast pace, trying to grind it out, and we're just doing what we can, and then you get into a larger organization that's really rigid, really structured, and you don't have that kind of freedom just, at that point, you may be unhappy there as well. So taking the time for that kind of clarity is also really, really important. So that's the first thing. So taking time to get clear on what you want. The second thing I recommend is looking at other job sites. I love Indeed, y'all. I love Indeed. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I'm here on the platform. Appreciate y'all, right? But Indeed and LinkedIn are not the only places that are that have jobs that are hiring people. There are so many other sites out there. And the problem with some of these sites like LinkedIn and Indeed is that they may have jobs that are out there that are really stale, and or maybe a shadow posting where somebody kind of posted in and it really wasn't a job. And so you want to make sure that you're evaluating other options when it comes to job sites. And so here are a few sites that I want to recommend. Well Found, Built In, Glassdoor, which is a oldie but a goodie, ZipRecruiter, eFinancial Careers for the finance folks, and then Financial Job Bank for some of the finance folks. Those are places where you have the opportunity to look for additional jobs. And there's so many other sites as well. I just wanted to give you some insight on just a few that I had seen. And what's important when you're getting to those job sites and you're starting to think about putting in applications, create a schedule for yourself, because we know the job process is hard. We know applying, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. I get that. So taking the time to create a structure, where it's like, hey, I'm going to dedicate this kind of time. I'm going to dedicate this kind of time to this activity, and then I'm going to move on and do something else. That will allow you to have some balance in your job application process and make sure that you're not burning out too soon. Because especially as this time frame is a little bit compressed, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. And then after a week of putting in applications, you're like, forget it, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So it's really important for you to create a schedule, create yourself some structure so that you apply for the jobs for this period of time, and then you're able to go spend time with your family and or just find balance elsewhere. So that's the second thing. So we talked about getting clear on what you want, and then identifying additional job sites and creating a job application schedule. The next thing, and if you don't listen to anything else I'm saying, if you tune me out or you log off after this, please, for the love of God, listen to this. Know your market value. Know your market value. Do not wait until someone is bringing you a salary offer or asking you your salary expectations to then try to figure it out. It's so important for you to know ahead of time what your skills are worth on the marketplace. It's important for you to know what your expertise is worth on the marketplace. Knowing that ahead of time lets you have the chance to vet what companies and industries are willing to pay you what you're looking for, and making sure that when companies are coming to you with job offers, that they're not playing in your face. And so if you're not like, hey, I don't know where to start to look for my value, here are a couple of places that you can look. The first place is Glassdoor. Glassdoor, again, is an oldie but a goodie. PayScale, Salary.com, Salary Expert, and also PayLab, which has international salary data. Being able to look at some of the other job sites I mentioned, they may have some salary information on there as well. But taking the time to look at those sites gives you a sense of, hey, what is the market charging for my skill set? Because you may have additional expertise that will increase your salary request. Perhaps you've worked with a certain type of client, a certain size of client. Perhaps you've worked in a particular industry that gave you additional background, whatever it might be. You may have some special sauce that increases what you charge or what your salary requirements are, but you want to at least have a base of knowledge, a base of understanding as to, hey, this is what the market is charging. And is this company giving me a competitive offer, or is it really below market? So for example, if you've done your research and this job should pay $100,000 and the company's giving you a solid 80, now you know that, hey, they're not even meeting the minimum in the market or the average in the market. They're well below. And so you may have to ask yourself, is this a role that I really want to pursue if I'm going to walk in the door being underpaid? And so, like I said, if you don't listen to anything else I say tonight, please, please, please know your market value. And so the next thing is for you to start talking to your people. Start talking to your people if you haven't already. So this is the time for you to talk to, if you have old recruiter friends, new recruiter friends, friends that are hiring managers in companies that you're interested in, people that are in professional associations with you, people that are in your fraternity or your sorority chapter, people that are in your church group who may work in the companies that you want to work in. This is the time to tap into those folks if you haven't already. And I know some folks have trepidation with going and asking people for help because they don't want to be a burden or they don't want to seem needy. It's hard right now in America and around the globe. People are struggling. People need jobs. People are trying to live life. And so most people are not going to have a whole lot of indigestion if you come to them and ask them about a job. And if you're wondering, well, how do I broach this conversation? How do I broach this conversation with someone? Something simple you can say is, hey, Julia, I know that you work at Coca-Cola, and I know that you work in such and such department. Do you know if they're hiring? I'm looking for an opportunity. And that's the end of the conversation. And they can say, I'll find out. I don't know. Leave me alone. Whatever the response is. But if you come to someone with a simple, short request, usually they're willing to respond to you. And again, people know that life is hard right now for everybody. And so getting asked for help is not something new or out of pocket. So I want to just kind of release you from that I don't want to ask for help thing. So hopefully that helps as well. And if you can't hear me and you're watching on LinkedIn, please let me know. And so the next thing, so we talked again about, just a quick recap so far. What did we talk about? Getting clear, identifying additional job sites, knowing your market value, and then start talking to your people. The next thing is for you to get your resume and your LinkedIn profile together. Get those two things together. I know that you know this, but sometimes we just keep going through the process with the same documents. We go through the process with the resume that we've been using for the past year. If it hasn't been working for you, if it hasn't made you successful, this is the time to tweak it. And I'm not going to get into the mechanics tonight, but what I want to encourage you to do is that taking a look at your resume and asking yourself, if I read this resume for the position that I'm applying for, am I a finalist? Am I at least a finalist? Would I get an interview? And you can ask yourself that question. And then I would also ask an objective party, someone who works in the industry, perhaps, someone who's a hiring manager or recruiter. Getting feedback on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile is so important, because when we operate in a vacuum, we think we're killing it. We think we're out here running things. Meanwhile, it's not really where it needs to be. And so we're not getting the results, but we're not getting the feedback to help us improve. So as you're working on your resume and LinkedIn, I highly recommend for you to get feedback in the process. The second thing I would say about both your resume and your LinkedIn profile is to seek to elevate the language. Elevate the language of those documents. The reason why that's important is if you're trying to make more money, if you're trying to break through the six-figure barrier, or if you're already in six figures and you're trying to get to another level, if you're trying to get to another title, you need to elevate the language in terms of how you describe your experience. So let's say that you're an associate right now, or an analyst, or a specialist, an individual contributor, and you want to step into leadership. You will have to translate your experience from just executing to also coordination, strategic decisions, managing, being able to communicate with people at different levels of the organization. You have to show more of the results that you were able to achieve through other people. So when you're thinking about how do I write my resume, and whatever you may want to put into ChatGPT if you're not hiring a writer, it's those kinds of things that you want to think about, the step change between the job you may be in right now or your last job and where you want to go, because those may be two different messages. And speaking of LinkedIn, this is a place where recruiters are at all day, every day. This is where they hang out. And so it's really important for you to have a strong presence on the platform. So when you're putting your profile together, something as simple as putting your picture, a LinkedIn profile with a picture, it is 14 times more likely to get a view than a profile that doesn't have one. So if you're someone who's listening to me right now and your profile does not have a photo, now's the time to go put one on there. And you don't have to do anything elaborate. You can go stand by a blank wall like the one behind me, have someone take your photo or put it on a tripod and done. You don't have to overcomplicate the process. The other thing I want to mention is it's important for you to not just list your experience on your profile and have some sort of generic intro. It's important for you to highlight the real results, the real contributions, the real achievements that you've had. So thinking about the scope of the projects that you've worked on. Think of the type of clients that you've been able to work with. Think of the kind of money that you've generated for an organization or the costs that you've saved. And, thinking about those things, that's what you want to really make sure that you're highlighting. Because again, your LinkedIn is a part of your personal brand and what it is that you want to be known for. And especially if you're stepping into another level, another earning level, another income level, you have to elevate how you describe your brand, how you're positioned in the marketplace, the value that you can create in an organization. People or companies pay people more money because they think they tie it back to the value that they expect the person to create. So if you think about someone who's coming in to lead a large team, that individual, if they do things well, if they execute well, they're going to be able to get results from all of the people that work for them. So that's the reason they're able to charge so much money in terms of their salary requirements. So if you're trying to get to that level, you need to demonstrate that you have the leadership skills, the managerial, the coordination, the strategy skills to get results from other people. That's how you're going to be able to show that, hey, I should be able to get this amount of money that I'm asking for. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is for you to start prepping for interviews right now. Start prepping for interviews right now. Too often what happens is that we get the interview and we're trying to scramble the night before, figuring out, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? How, tell me about yourself. We're scrambling the night before trying to get answers to all those questions. And so maybe we walk into the interview or we log in and we're flustered or our answers are not really all that cohesive because we're trying to do it at the last minute. If you start prepping for your interviews now, you can work out the kinks, you can work out the nerves, you can create more powerful answers that will more resonate with your interviewer. You have time to think through questions to ask your interviewer. An interview is a two-way street. It's a date, essentially. An interview is a date. Do you like me? Do I like you? If we don't like each other, we're not gonna go out again. It's the same thing with a job interview. And so taking the time to prep and go through questions allows you to also build confidence in how you speak, the stories that you tell of your personal experience. Because if they're going to say, tell me about a time when, and if you're well, and you're fumbling, that already may rub the person the wrong way because they may seem, oh, hey, do you really have a command of your experience? Are you really prepared for this? And so taking the time to work out the kinks and get confident will allow you to speak in an articulate and concise fashion when you get into the interview. The other reason why it's important to start prepping for interviews now is as you're developing questions, you're able to think about what your career values are. What's important to you from a career perspective? And very often we're thinking about, okay, well, I have to show that I did this and I have to show I did that and whatever. But what does a company need to show you? What's important to you? For example, is DEI that's something that's important to you? Because right now, companies are chopping down DEI programs left and right. So if that's something that's important to you, then you need to make sure that you're asking questions and getting context. If you want to make sure that the organization has a good work-life balance, you can ask that question in the interview. Tell me a little bit about how the team works. What's the team schedule or the dynamic? If ongoing development is important to you from a career perspective, you want to form questions around that for your interview. But if you're trying to rush the night before to get prepared for an interview, you're not going to have time to prepare all of those questions. And then you end up in a job where it's like, yes, maybe you're getting paid the money that you want, but it's an environment that doesn't feel good. The people don't treat you well. Your boss is a hack. There's all those other pieces outside of the money that may be missing because we didn't do the due diligence on the front end to align the company and the job with our specific career values. And so with that, I want to quickly recap on the things we've talked about tonight to help you get ready for the busy hiring season in September and October. The things we talked about tonight were, first, making sure that you're clear on what you want so that you're spending time, quality time on the applications instead of just kind of spraying and praying. Making sure that you're doing the research on the organizations, on the environments, on the people that work there to make sure that it's going to be an environment that fits for you and that you can ask more questions in the interview. Secondly, making sure that you're identifying additional job sites. Again, we love Indeed as much as anybody. We love LinkedIn. They're a vibe, but they're not the only game in town. There's so many other sites that have job postings and job requisitions for you to take a look at. Some of the ones that I mentioned: Well-Found, Built-In, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, eFinancial Careers, and Financial Job Bank. So those are just a handful, but there's several more that are out there that you can take a look at to make sure that you're diversifying your options when it comes to job requisition sites and so forth. The third thing was to know your market value. How much are your skills and expertise worth in the marketplace? What is the value? And making sure that if you're coming up with your own kind of secret sauce or special sauce to say, hey, maybe they're going to pay on average in the market 85, but with all my expertise, it's 95, making sure that you have that kind of airtight as to why you're above market rate. But you got to know what the market is charging first. And that also helps you to know that when you go into salary conversations or they're quoting you a range for a position, you know whether or not they're truly being competitive and that they want to compensate their people well, or if they're playing in your face. Those are two different things. So you want to make sure that you know your value so that you can vet the salary offers and compensation packages with a clear head. And some of the places we talked about for understanding your market value: Glassdoor, PayScale, Salary.com, Salary Expert, and PayLab. PayLab, I believe they have international salary data. So if any of you watching are in another country right now outside the US, you may want to check out that site as well. The last three things we talked about: start talking to your people. Who are your contacts? Who do you know? Old recruiters, new recruiters, old hiring managers, old colleagues, people from your sorority and fraternity, people from your professional associations. Who do you know? This is the time to get in gear and ask people honestly for support on your career journey. You don't need to feel needy. You don't feel like you're a burden. Asking for help is something we should all do more of instead of us just struggling out here. So make sure that you're talking to your people. The last two things: get your resume and your LinkedIn profile together. This is the time to refresh the language, elevate the language so that you're positioning yourself for a higher paid opportunity. We want to make sure that if we're good, we want to maximize what we can earn in the market. And that comes with positioning ourselves with additional expertise, additional skills, additional achievements, and speaking like we're at that level, speaking like we're that quality or caliber of candidate. And again, if your profile does not have a picture on it on LinkedIn, make sure you do that tonight. Profiles that have a picture are 14 times more likely to get a view than those that don't. So please make sure that your picture is on there. And then lastly, start prepping for your interviews right now. Don't wait till it's scheduled. Work out the kinks, work out the nerves. Here's another cheat code. If you're able to do mock interviews with other people, make sure that you're recording those. Don't just record when you're talking to yourself. Record how you respond to someone else, because how you respond to, say, let's say you're recording it on Zoom or even with just your phone, your demeanor in that setting may be very different than when you're talking to an actual person in practice. So I would highly recommend that if you're going to practice with an individual, also record in that setting as well if they're open to doing that. And I highly recommend that you don't interview or mock interview with someone that you're really, really close to, like your mom or your dad, because, you know, they can say, you're doing great, honey. And while we appreciate moral support, we want to make sure that you're getting as objective feedback as possible. So someone that you can trust, but they don't really have a dog in the fight as to whether you get a job or not. So they can give you the most objective, fair, and honest feedback possible. So an old colleague, a roommate, perhaps an old friend, somebody that, again, that you trust, somebody who, a recruiter that you know, they can also give you some feedback. I would also recommend sharing your resume and getting feedback on that as well, because we may think we're killing it. We may think that, man, this resume is bomb. I'm loving this thing. This is all right. Meanwhile, your resume may not be saying what it needs to say. So I highly recommend that you send your resume to recruiters or hiring managers that you know that you can trust, so they can tell you that, hey, this is spot on, or man, this ain't really hitting. You need to do some work on it. And so with that, so I think we've covered everything. Again, prepping for interviews right now. Don't wait until they're scheduled. And so this is your opportunity to get out there and find the opportunity that you deserve. This is the time. You have the opportunity to go and ask for what you want in the marketplace. Yes, it will be a grind. And so the last thing I will say is to give yourself grace in this process. Applying for jobs is not easy. Going for interviews is not easy. Continuously editing and re-editing and revising your resume, I know it's not easy. So I want you to give yourself some grace and space in this process. You may have a day where you're like, to hell with this. I just need a break. That's okay. And that's why I recommended earlier creating an application schedule or a job search schedule, so that you're not completely consumed by this process. But I highly recommend that you give yourself some grace. Know that it may take a little bit of time, but if you're capitalizing on these peak seasons right now, you may be able to shorten the cycle versus if you were applying over the summer. So I hope that that is also helpful for you and giving you the permission to give yourself some grace right now. And so as we wrap up, I just want to let you know, it's a reminder that my Elevate group coaching program, the doors are closing in the next couple of days. And so if you have been looking to get to the next level in your finance or accounting career, I'm the person to talk to. This is the time for you to get paid. This is the time for you to find a job that gives you the balance that you want. This is the time. So if you're interested in getting to that next level, comment right now, Elevate, wherever you're watching, or you can send me a DM with the word Elevate, and let's talk about it and get you enrolled in the program before the doors close. If you're watching, you're like, Julia, I'm not in finance or accounting, or I don't want a group coaching program. That's not really my jam. I get it. Group coaching ain't for everybody. However, I still want to work with you and see you be successful and see you get paid out here. So if that's where you're at, I would love for you to comment right now, one-on-one, or you can DM me the words one-on-one. And let's talk about how I can give you the personalized support that you need to get to the level that you want. You don't have to end 2024 feeling the same way that you came in, with a job that you don't like, around people that you can't stand, and your boss is a hack. Like, you don't have to continue in that energy. This is a time for you to step out of where you are, to make a powerful decision right now, to make a powerful decision today, to say, this is when things change. This is what I'm going to bet on myself. This is when I'm ready to take the next step. I'm going to do this right now. So again, I'll either comment Elevate if you're looking for the group coaching program, or one-on-one if you want to work with me directly, or if you're not in finance and accounting. And let's talk about how we make sure that you end the year on a better note than when you started it. And so with that, I want to say thank you for watching this week's episode of The Career Climb. I will be back next week at 6 p.m. Central, and hopefully my sound will work the first time and we won't have to re-record. But thank you guys, whoever came back and was hanging in with me for a second time tonight. I am grateful. Thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening.